city of Richmond owns this property now, and this property is also in the agricultural land reserve. So there were early plans to try to get this out of the agricultural land reserve, to develop it, and the Agricultural Land Commission said no, which is why this land exists in the state that it does. That's not ALR. There's towers on it. That's not ALR. We've got Walmart. But over here, this is ALR, and so it hasn't been developed. And it hasn't been developed in part due to the advocacy of the Garden City Conservation Society. And so this is the group that Sharon is with. They really worked hard to keep this in the agricultural land reserve. Now, I really appreciate the fact that it's in the ALR. That's what conserved it. The reality is, though, that it was conserved because people figured that peat could make good agricultural soil. And in fact, it does. In fact, if you lime peat to correct the acidity, if you drain it to deal with the fact that it's constantly wet, and if you fertilize it to deal with the fact that it's a low nutrient environment, then it creates a beautiful soil called muck soil, which is wonderful for vegetable production. The problem is that doing all of those things also destroys the peat, and all of that carbon that's been sequestered over the millennia is fairly rapidly released back up into the environment. So particularly in Europe, in South Asia, people are recognizing that farming on peat maybe isn't the best thing to do if we're concerned about greenhouse gas emissions. And so there's a real effort to revert, to take peatlands out of agricultural production and to try to restore those peatlands, to get bogs growing again, because this is a real concern from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective. So my goal today is to try to get some of the sphagnum out of the area where it's growing on this side that's slated to be buried, and move it over to areas where sphagnum is weak or non-existent, but we have a very similar environment.
My name is Kathy Dunster, and I'm a faculty member at KPU in the School of Horticulture, and I lead the Urban Ecosystems degree. And of course, we're in a wetland bog in an urban ecosystem, and it clearly is something that is of interest to me.
What am I doing here? So my name is Christine Turing. I'm a faculty member at Kwantlen Polytechnic University, and I'm here on the Garden City lands to replant a bog. I love bogs.
When we look at the Garden City lands, for example, this land was never farmed. This would have been productive harvest land for the Musqueam people. Yep. And there's tremendous value in this land that isn't just its agricultural capacity. And I think that this land and other peatlands were put into the agricultural land reserve because people recognized that peat could be converted into good agricultural soil. You can take this acidic, waterlogged soil, and you can drain it, and you can lime it, and you can create something that's called a muck soil, which is wonderful for vegetable production. But doing that destroys it. So when you drain it and when you lime it, you've got then maybe 50, 100 years before it disappears. And you're seeing that in Cloverdale. You're seeing that in Ontario, places where people have actively farmed peatlands. They destroy the peatland, and I think that the challenge then is trying to recognize that this is valuable land in its own right, that has value beyond its agricultural capacity. And I know that saying that is somewhat controversial. Here I am. I'm a professor of agriculture, right? And I'm training future farmers. But I think we need to recognize the value of this land as a potential in a natural ecosystem as opposed to a farmed ecosystem. You know what? So I think that the most effective policies that help us protect the environment are policies that very specifically are aimed at conservation. So there's certainly been a hope that if we can promote agricultural policies that promote high yield production systems, for example, that then we won't need to have so much land dedicated to farming, and that we'll have land left over for conservation. That hasn't proved to be the case, has it? We have very high yielding systems, and instead of ensuring that everybody has enough to eat, we are using the grains and the oilseeds we produce to produce biofuels, to feed more livestock. It's not going to address issues of food security, is it? So, so really, if we want conservation, we need to protect the land we want to conserve, right? We need policies directly aimed at conserving, rather than hoping that through some indirect mode of promoting high productivity agriculture, that somehow that will lead to conservation. That people will just want to do the right thing with the extra land rather than produce more cash crops.